Welcome to another special Euro 24 edition of Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. We're joined again by the brilliant Kevin Graham, international coach, live from Spain, from our brilliant live from Doncaster man, Tony, me, ex-Royal Signals and everything good in coaching. And of course, our very own Mr. Peter Prickett, 3v3 guru and top man on all things. But boys, dear Lord above, it's getting scary now. I think the first what if has to be, what if Gareth was right all along? Kev, what do you think?
Well, he's definitely converting a few on the fence, that's for sure. Although I think most of them on the other side of the fence are going to take a little bit more convincing. I think Pete's theory around Portugal has a little bit more meat behind it today than it had the other day, to be perfectly honest. Because what has he changed? Not a great deal. He really didn't make any major adjustments, both in the game or prior to the game. He and what I do like, and I think we all appreciate, is how good he is in the social site corner with the players, with the squad, maintaining belief in a group that were definitely struggling, and he looked like he was struggling himself. And I think he's kind of given us a little bit of insight into that with a couple of slightly more open interviews in the last few days. As I think once you get past the group stages, the last 16, it almost means that the pressure's off slightly, that they're not going to fail right at the start of the journey. Yeah. And so it feels like they're coming out of the shells a little bit. And Southgate is making reference to the fact that it's been tough, and the fact that he's kept them all together, kept that belief, that resilience amongst the group. For me, it doesn't mean everything. It's one of the constituent parts of managing a good tournament program, and he's obviously very, very good at that. So huge credit to him. I'm really delighted.
Yeah. Tone, I've seen a lot written about on social media and on the proper media about siege mentality. You, as an ex-military man, is that what you're seeing, or?
I think there's been a little bit of that. If I'm honest, there's been no sort of rumbles of discontent from anybody that hasn't been involved in the starting at 11 or hasn't got on. I mean, we haven't heard a dicky bird from those players that aren't involved. And I think at one point during the group stage, Luke Shaw actually turned down a media request because he said, I've not been involved in any of the games, so it wouldn't be fair for me to comment. And I thought that was pretty good. And to sort of go towards your other point that you asked Kev, I think he's done well not to bow to pressure. There's been endless pressure from game one. Do this different, do that different. Well, actually, by sticking to his guns and getting the results without the performances, you can't fault the guy.
Yeah. Pete, do you think that's where it's come good to have that clear vision of how he wants to play, and then to stick to that? Because the minute I saw the team last night on Sky, it lined it up as like 3-4-3, and I thought, I don't think he's going to play like that. I didn't see it like that. There was an out of possession sort of formation, obviously, but and an in possession formation, but the out of possession formation to me just looked like 4-3-3 or 4-5-1. Is that how you saw it?
I'll have a plan and stick to it, right?
Oh.
We've talked about this before, about whether this is actually how he really wants to play football, but it is how he believes it gives him the best chance of winning a tournament. And we're into a final, so one step away, many steps closer than most of the other teams have got. 4-5-1 looked like they dropped into out of possession, but they had a lot of possession, especially in the first half. So it was quite hard to tell what the out of possession shape really was. I don't think the Dutch sustained their possession phases for very long. So we didn't settle into that shape too many times. I think there was a little bit for the first 3 or 4 minutes, and then for the last 4 or 5 minutes of the half. But otherwise, we dominated.
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what it did it for me. There was a bit in the first half, and the commentator said, "Oh, look, the right centre half Walker has pushed right up the right wing," and it was like, I don't think he's playing right at the moment. Because the minute I saw Trippier, the minute I saw the team with Trippier in it, I immediately thought he's going to play, 4-3-3. When they had the ball, though, Trippier was really high and wide on the left, wasn't he? Saka was really high and wide on the right, which allowed what we all wanted, I think, Bellingham and Foden to be either side of Kane. That's how it looked to me.
Well, in the first half, I do think it was 3-4-3. And it's just that Walker was playing in a much more of a hybrid role than before. We could go back to, in a way, to Gary Neville's role at Euro 96. Yeah. Where he's talked about it and they've talked about it and said everyone says that we played as a back three, but we switched between a back three and a back four. Yeah. And in possession, in the first half of the game, it was pretty clear that Walker was no longer tucked in as tight to his other two centre backs, and he was pulling out wide, which gave us overloads on that right hand side. But at the start of the second half, he was much narrower. And then later on, after the substitutions were made around that 75th minute, it did become much more like a back four. Walker pulled out, Shaw pulled out, and we managed to find some more passing angles. We'll talk about, I'm sure in a minute, how we were more progressive than in previous games through the middle of the pitch. But there's reasons for that are not just linked to how England played.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you see on social media, the lads that I've talked to that, with the greatest respect, are not coaches. The basic was, they played really well for 30 minutes, and what you saw was Koeman just made one little change, didn't he? You saw that level of coach where he could make one little change, and all of a sudden it was really difficult for us to play with that freedom, wasn't it?
Well, Kevin and I were just talking about this before the podcast began, and Koeman, without being too disrespectful, when we talk about elite coaches, Koeman's a little bit below that. Yeah, and that is why we think England.
I was talking about us lot.
Yeah, right. Well,
he's a bit higher than us lot.
True.
Give me a crack at the job, and we'll see.
Yeah,
that's the spirit, mate.
He did make that change, but he didn't and couldn't make it until half time. Whereas I think that the truly elite level, they would have fixed it during the first half. They would have ordered those, and they got the instructions out and actually fixed it during the game. He needed to go to half time.
I thought it changed with the substitution. Did you? I thought it changed when that lad when Depay came off injured. No.
I don't think it changed it in the half. In the first half, it was pretty similar.
There's a few ways you can look at this, but I think it was as simple as the defensive line for Holland stepping up as much as 7 or 8 yards, maybe even more actually, because what that did was it allowed them to pin in Saka on one side and Trippier on the other, and it looked like we were defending almost a flat 5 for 15-20 minutes in the second half. And they played with a lot more possession, domination in our half. And Kane, because he can't go over the top, it's a very simple change to make. But if he's not going to run in behind, and you've got two centre halves defending as deep as they did in the first half, you've got to be asking questions. And I agree with Pete's point. What we would criticise Southgate for, watching 15-20 minutes turn into 25 minutes of the same pattern of play, where you're being outplayed, you're being dominated in key areas of the pitch. You have to counter with something from the sideline, and he didn't do. I didn't think till half time, and the personnel. I mean, really, what happened was, Vigo obviously came on at half time. As you say, Depay got substituted in the first half, and they moved Marlon into the centre to replace Depay. I didn't see a massive change to the pattern there, and it was the second half where clearly, as a team, they probably got around the board and said, right, this is our average positions at the moment. We've got to get this far up the pitch to start to have a little bit more possession in their half, in England's half of the pitch. And in fairness, true to form, England then sat deep, and just watched them play fun for a while. It didn't hurt us, but it was frustrating to watch for your armchair fan or for a coach. Because even from a coach's perspective, you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, what changes would make a difference here? And it would be personnel who were more mobile and were able to give, to pose a bit more of a threat over the top. And maybe he timed that change perfectly if you look at it with retrospect.
Yeah. Tone, as a closet United fan, you must have enjoyed Mainu, though. He was good last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, again, Kev talked about pitch position there. If you looked at his pitch position in the first half, he kind of spent a lot of time, I thought, in that high inside right position. Yeah. And we were getting up, we talked about Walker getting up and supporting Saka, but actually Mainu also did quite a lot of that. And again,
and Foden.
I was going to say there's that lovely Mainu Foden little thing going on, wasn't there, for 10 minutes, where I got very excited then. I did.
It allowed them to combine more, didn't it, in a dangerous area. Instead of picking the ball up, say, 10 yards into the opposition half, they were picking it up 5 yards outside the opposition box. Yeah. And it meant that particularly Foden, Mainu was attracting players and shifting the position of the defence, which allowed Foden probably a little bit more space than he's had, and he was ever so unlucky with a couple of those efforts.
That was that trademark. You say that's why I raised it. That when Mainu was making those runs, I think it allowed. He drew attention, and Foden did that thing that he does. His trademark little let the ball run across and then leather it in the top left-hand corner, and that was so. That I think I was getting up, me.
Yeah, you could see the look on his face. He thought he'd put it in, didn't he?
Yeah. Should we talk about the elephant in the room then, Pete? Was it a penalty?
Does it matter?
Well,
from an England perspective, okay. Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I mean, a lot of people will follow the narrative where we go, we've been hard done by for so long. It's about time something went our way in one of these tournaments. I generally don't buy into that, and you judge each incident on its own merits. And no, of course, it's not a penalty.
Of course, I thought it'd have been, wouldn't it? It'd have been dreadful to have gone in 1-0 down, though. I thought they absolutely deserved at least to go in at 1-1, didn't they?
Well, to be fair, there was loads and loads of time left in the half.
Yeah, I thought we'd have scored, wouldn't we?
You don't know what else is going to happen. Just because we don't get the penalty doesn't mean we don't score in some other way. But the Dutch did what England and Southgate have done all tournament. They went in front and they dropped off.
Yeah.
And in a way, they did it even worse, I think, than England have done, because when England have dropped off, the gaps have been quite tight and it's been harder for opponents to play through. Whereas the way the Dutch did it, they were really deep, but they left the gaps and they left enough space to invite England to dribble at them and also to play through the gaps, play through the lines, which is another reason why we saw Foden, Mainu and Saka and Walker getting so much joy over on that side. So they definitely did it to themselves to a degree.
Yeah. Pickford had, what did Pickford do last night? There wasn't brilliant, was he? There wasn't after the goal.
2 good saves in the second half.
Yeah, that Ida made at 67. Yeah, there was one that went at him quite quick, wasn't there? There was one that went at him quite quick, but
kind of bounced.
Yeah,
there was one that bounced off Van Dijk's leg.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting. I think their goal, for all it was an absolute screamer, it was a clanger, wasn't it? Given how well we defended, they never looked like scoring to me much after that. I wasn't, they didn't. The back 3, 4, call it what you like. I thought outstanding again last night.
If you
I had a
ask,
bit of a- Go on,
if
Kev.
you ask where our weakness looks like defensively at the moment, you'd have to say it's in transition around Declan Rice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't say it near an Arsenal fan. God.
He's giving the ball away. He's giving the ball away in really deep areas for me with what should be simple passes. And if he can't make that simple pass, then just go longer so that you're not risking the ball on the 18-yard line. He's done it a couple of times now. Just while we're kind of in that area, what did people think about Pickford's role in their goal? Because our goalkeeping coach tweeted something last night about pretty much saying that he thought that Pickford should have done better. And I just thought, one, the pace of the shot, there wasn't a great deal he could have done about it. But again, secondly, and I hate to do this to you, Pete, why is Kyle Walker turning his back on the shot? Why is he not just taking one for the team?
Well, I've seen so many. To me, it looks like they're coached that way. They almost make that goalkeeper A, don't they? So they've got to try and keep their hands behind the back. That is the first thing, isn't it? So they're trying to get into a position where they can't give a handball for anything. You know, if it goes anywhere near the hand. Actually turning your back, yeah, I'm from Salford. We were never taught that. I can absolutely promise you. But it seems to be. I've seen a lot of other defenders do it apart from him. You know, they sort of take that A shot. I've seen Diaz. Diaz does it a lot, and Diaz has blocked a lot of shots with his trailing left foot. Is it his left foot?
It would be, yeah. But I'm not having it.
No, you don't. For me, you don't turn your back because you know why are you turning your back? Can you make that shape without you? I understand why these are like keep your arms out of the way, and it's absolutely need to change the law of handball. But yeah, just to make your point, I goalkeepers union, and I'm usually the hardest on goalkeepers. I didn't see Pickford being at fault at all for that. I mean, you couldn't have hit that much sweeter, could you? And it went right in. You know, it's.
I actually, my initial reaction was Pickford could have done a bit better. If you look at it, the way he dives and potentially he might have dived with the wrong hand. The way he's one of those where he looked like he dives and then kind of goes like that rather than diving to get distance. He went like that and realised he hadn't quite got it, and it was struck so well. So that's why this is it's harsh to be too critical. But I think if you watch it again, I genuinely feel his movement and his reaction to it probably wasn't the best.
I always think with keepers as well, you know, like we've said, it's Rice gets caught and he hasn't got that lot of time to set himself or think, right, what's going to happen here? You know, it is split seconds that as opposed to, you know, like it's been buzzing around the box for, you know, 30, 40 seconds and then someone hits a worldie, you know, could he have got nearer to it? I didn't have a big problem with it, to be honest.
Yeah. Just to go back to the penalty, by the way, I'm just going to throw this one in there from my side of things. I thought it was a penalty all day long.
I'm shouting, don't want it at the screen. Don't want it. Don't care. Don't want it.
But yeah. I mean, I think Pete's point is absolutely bang on. You're right. Who cares? Who cares? But
yes.
if anyone wants to break that down and take it anywhere else on the pitch, that's a yellow card.
I'll tell you what is really interesting. You know, you're talking about narratives, Pete, and it was all that, oh, you know, the narrative, we deserve one, we've had some really bad ones in the past. The narrative I saw, most of, wasn't that at all. It was Southgate's a lucky manager again.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have got through without the bloody penalty. You know,
I saw a lot, and admittedly, this was mostly after the game. This is revenge on Koeman for 1993.
Yes. There was lots of Graham Taylor memes, wasn't there?
A lot of that. This one's for you, Graham Taylor. Oh, yeah, I don't think, honestly, was that 31 years ago? I don't know. I think does football karma take that long to play out, even if it exists? Was the Lampard one bouncing off the bar and out genuinely karma for 66?
You're talking to a man who can remember a penalty that Liverpool should have got from 1923. Never mind. You're right, though. You're right. You know, whenever we play Germany, and they get a decision, they go, well, that makes up for 1966 and the one that came back off the bar, don't they? It's like, well, how far back are you going, lads?
I think Dumfries' reaction to getting the penalty decision against him and the yellow card says a lot, actually, in favour of it being a penalty, because he wasn't protesting the fact at all.
Yeah,
And we know that most modern players would be in the referee's face and screaming the walls down. But again, you can freeze frame it, can't you? One of the stills that I've seen, Dumfries' leg is straight and his studs are up. So yes, Kane is kicking in his direction, but it's dangerous play from the other player. And if it, like most people have said, if it happened anywhere else on the pitch, you'd expect to see a free kick. It's no different, almost no different to the one that Bellingham got booked for. It's a 50-50 slide in, two players sliding in, hardly any contact.
I thought Bellingham was really lucky to stay on the pitch for that one.
Nah,
actually, but
it was reckless.
It's not 1974 anymore, Tony.
But they were both on, the floor.
I think he stayed on. He was low. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, I mean they were both sliding in on it.
Yeah,
it was. I thought it was a bit of a desperate challenge to get involved in the game because
he was
anonymous last night. Bellingham for the second game on the box.
While we're segueing out of the penalty, let's segue into Harry and Jude, because from our last podcast, they were probably the two players that none of us thought were great, and I'd say exactly the same. I think everybody else was probably at least a 7, couple of 8s in there.
Yeah.
Them two, Harry again, a 4, Bellingham a 5, just for me. He was just a bit better than Harry, but Harry was dreadful for me. Exactly the same.
But it shouldn't be a surprise now, should it? I mean, we kind of sacrifice any expectation around his contribution in open play, to the patterns of the game. All we're doing is we're playing a player there we're hoping for a moment of inspiration from. And unfortunately, Jude looks like that at the moment.
Yeah.
If you just to play devil's advocate, if you say if Everett Jersey had come on after an hour of yesterday's game, do you think England would have looked a little bit more lively? If he'd come on for Bellingham, because Bellingham was doing the same as Kane. It felt like he was a bit disjointed from the unit. He was, again, like I said the other day, he's arriving late into areas that he should have been arriving to receive or arriving late to go and press. He just looked laboured. And then he tries to have an impact on the game in the way that he did there. He ends up with the yellow card, and it was quite reckless, I thought.
Yeah. When, obviously, being a fully fledged Phil fan, when he took him off, I'm screaming, don't, what are you doing, Bellingham? Bellingham should go off. But they did give you that feedback, didn't they, that Phil had run the most. So, the analytics was perhaps saying he's,
I think by that point in the second half, they were both candidates. And it was you could have taken them both off quite easily.
Yeah.
They'd done very little for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you'd taken them both off, I don't think anyone would have batted an eyelid.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I mean, the other day after this, I did put, what options we might have off the bench to add to the side that I named at the end of the podcast after the Swiss game. And I said after about an hour, I think let Bellingham go out. Well, I might have said it. Let Bellingham go out there and be our flag bearer. He's going to run himself in the ground, and when he's got nothing left, get him off the pitch so that we change up. We don't stay on that laboured point. So,
did you like the subs? Oh, go on, sir. I was just going to ask Tom. Did you like the subs?
Yeah, I thought they did. They obviously the commentators have mentioned it, and our rugby union, for example, has now gone from using this term of game finishers, and whilst I might not like it because it's from a different sport, it is proving to be quite important for England, and it's nice that he gave them a little bit more time to do it. I do think that they were probably the right changes and maybe could have been made 5 minutes earlier, but at the same time, nobody's going to argue with the end result. The Palmer and Watkins combined for the goal. I'm not buying Watkins as manifestation mumbo jumbo. Yeah, we talked about it on the bench. That's how it was definitely going to end up. But you know, again, it shows that unity. If the players that are coming on are discussing potential combinations of how they might finish the game off for us, yeah, I'm all for it. You stick to it, lads. Believe what you want.
I was going to say, Pete, that thing, we started off with Gareth. What with Gareth was right all along. His subs have been pretty good, haven't they? To be fair.
Yesterday.
Well, all the way through. Well, you're talking about making them early, but yeah, all right. Let's say last night. Let's stick with last night. Last night, he was like, wow.
I just can't believe he hasn't used them earlier throughout the tournament with the amount of quality he's got on the bench.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Clearly, the way that the performances have dipped in the second half.
Last night Watkins and Palmer could easily have played half an hour last night, easily. And I think with Shaw, the great mistake of taking Luke Shaw. Well, it's now not a mistake because we got so deep into the tournament. Yeah. He's had enough time, but clearly he wants to start him, but he's still not quite fit enough to play more than 45 minutes. So that's why I think that substitution happened at half time. And of course, Trippier not being fully fit himself, that makes it quite easy for him to go, well, you play 45, you'll play 45. And it does. We saw the balance very early in that half. It gave us more balance. And then later on in the half, it gave us more options. And with the last 15 minutes or so, after those substitutions, when we got back into it, a bit more possession, that balance of Shaw really made a difference.
Good.
And I think the bit that we're all dying to talk about, especially Kevin, is Watkins and the run that Watkins makes, and he is essentially the only striker in the squad who's got that run in his locker, realistically.
Yeah. Go on, Kev, floor's yours. Well, just on the back of that, I think all the things we're saying about the substitutions mainly focuses on why does he not take Harry off? He's rubbish. Could have taken Harry off in every game, couldn't you?
Just going to the slight defence of him, he's rubbish, but he is joint top scorer in the tournament.
Yeah, he had 2 penalties, but yeah.
Right, they all count. They all count as one.
No, just in support of that point, I saw a stat before. No striker has scored more goals in the knockout stages of European Championships and World Cups than Harry Kane. And every stat I see about Harry Kane should really be caveated with, penalties and whatever. But you can't argue with that. It's just like you can't argue with Gareth Southgate is a successful England manager. Now, the finer detail, which is what we're here to talk about, then you're not criticising those individuals personally. You're just pointing out what the other options are and what you think about their performance and the way that they apply themselves. And look, Harry Kane was dreadful last night, in terms of open play, in terms of his contribution to the game, I thought. But that was what we expected. And I do think that substitution should have been made a lot earlier. And the ironic thing here is, guys, right, the goal itself was actually not brilliant in terms of setting it up. The finish was out of this world. Absolute a worldly finish. But setting that up, Palmer didn't need to look up and have incredible Kenny Dalglish-esque vision to find the space that he was going to run into. There was a gaping hole to deliver that ball into. On top of that, watch Watkins run and he starts it, he telegraphs it, you know where he's going. And look where De Vrij goes in comparison to the rest of the defensive line. If I'm an analyst on the Dutch side of things, I'm just looking at him and saying, if that's Van Dijk, he steps, that's offside, and you just can't carry on like you're shelling peas. Yeah. He's followed him all the way in there, 5 yards deeper than the defensive line. Now, I know it takes balls, but you can see everything there. It's not like there's a load of bodies in between. You're not entirely sure how that ball's going to arrive. Cole Palmer opens his body, takes a very deliberate touch. The whole world knows where he's going to deliver the ball.
Yep.
And De Vrij still follows him in there. So from a defensive point of view, if you've got Danny Blind or any other, Dutch defender from history looking at that and saying, what would you have done differently there? It's bloody obvious. But that point aside, for 20 minutes, half an hour before, the whole game could have changed by changing Harry Kane for for Ollie Watkins and asking Ollie Watkins to make more runs like that, probably from a little bit deeper.
That Kane doesn't make that run, probably. We know he doesn't really. That's not his sort of run. He doesn't have the pace of Watkins, which doesn't lead to the defender having to make the decision that he makes. He doesn't need to make a decision. He panics. Essentially, he panics and doesn't play the offside. He goes with the run because of the pace of Watkins and the run that he's made.
Yeah.
And probably the state of the game as well, Pete, because it was the 90th minute. Nobody wants to be the one to make the mistake in the 90th minute.
I think that's why they didn't step out then, Tom. Just because it wasn't.
I would imagine so. They wanted to keep the ball in front of him.
Yeah. But the other three defenders were ahead of him. Just to be clear, if you like, I've got a still. I'll send it to you all. And honestly, it's 3 defenders across, and then De Vries back here.
With him.
So as a team, it's not a conscious decision for them to drop in. It's one defender's decision who's tired. He's 32 years old now. De Vries isn't the quickest anyway, and I've been there a million times. I wasn't the quickest when I was 21, let alone 32. so I'm stepping out every time there, especially when you can see it telegraphed where the ball is going to be delivered and when. From a defensive point of view, that was a poor moment for him.
I'm watching it on my laptop, and I've walked out the lounge into the kitchen because I'm getting another beer for extra time. I just lather it right in the corner. It was like, don't need another beer. And then, of course, you've got to have another beer to settle down, haven't you, after it?
Any excuse.
I'd already had one moment like that when my daughter was in her bedroom, and when we had the goal chalked off, I'd already had one moment where I'd leapt off the sofa shouting.
Same. So I'm in a Spanish bar, right, watching it, and I'm sat with my wife watching it, and there was a mix of people there. The Spanish waiter was kind of like, "Look, I'm hoping you beat Holland." I went up when Saka scored that goal, and then you can see the whole restaurant kind of go, or the bar and whatever. You turn around, look at me, and go, "Sit down. It's not a goal. It's not a goal." But it's amazing, being over here to watch this play out for 2 reasons.
Yeah, that's a question I was going to ask you, Kev. Sunday.
Well,
where are you watching it?
Look, this has gone literally in the space of Ollie Watkins making that run and scoring that goal from the 89th to 90th minute. This whole tournament has come alive for me, and for us as a family, and for the significance for us, because on Sunday night we'll have a few Spanish and English friends here. Every other house around us will be Spanish flags out, and there'll be noise, and we'll hear on that. If we're watching an English stream and everyone else is watching the Spanish, sometimes you'll hear that there might be a 10-second delay or whatever. Yeah. We've got an amazing period of time to look forward to now, not just between now and the final, but also after the final, whatever happens, because it really, I'm absolutely buzzing. I've gone from, very disappointed, if I'm perfectly honest, about the whole experience in terms of, that I'm not getting the love, I'm not getting the feedback from the whole experience. And all of a sudden I've gone from kind of 0 to 60, and I'm, I'll be playing all the songs around the house the next few days. I'll be wearing my England shirt with pride. When I go for a run along the Passé, I'll have this on, and it really is. It is going to be an amazing few days. But the other thing I wanted to say was, people think that it's just the preserve of English culture that the fans are critical, that the analysts really get stuck into the team. It's exactly the same over here.
Is it?
The Spanish fans in the bar on Tuesday night for the Spain-France game had such low expectations of their team, really? Which is incredible when you look at how good they are. In the media, it's the same, and lots of good coaches I've worked with here, A-licensed and pro-licensed coaches, are very critical of De La Fuente. They don't think he's good enough to manage this team, and yet look how good they've been. I mean, they've been head and shoulders now, if you consider where they are and their performances in comparison to, there were some good performances from the likes of Germany, but it doesn't matter now. They're nowhere to be seen. Look at Spain, they're way out in front. So it's a really interesting kind of, place to be right now. I mean, I couldn't be in a better place. And
what is the criticism? I mean, the only things I can think of might be that they're too young, they're not ready, maybe. They're too open, perhaps, and maybe similar issues with their centre forward to our centre forward.
There's a little bit around Morata, but there's actually more around the changes, the timing of the substitutions that he makes. They really don't like those because you've got what I think some people perceive to be ineffective players coming on. But what De La Fuente does, he manages more of this starts and finishes mentality. And he's looking at players who come on. Marino obviously was a great example for the winner against Germany, but he sees them as change ups rather than I'm going to have to change it because he's not as good as the starting lineup, but he's running out and I've got no other choice but to make that change. He sees it as a change up, I think, and I think a lot of the fans here. I don't think they've got a deep enough squad. Spain. The starting 12, 13 players, or the best 12, 13 players, are playing unbelievable football. But unlike England, which is, in my opinion, got 20, 25 genuinely world-class players, Spain have only got that 12, 13. And I think that's also a fear that they're concerned that Spain still don't have that depth that they had back in the Xavi and Iniesta period. And it's just a mindset,
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments that could have changed football forever. Every what if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones.
You signed the Germany game with Spain that you can get at them. They were big time wobbling for me against Germany.
They were wobbling at times against France.
Yeah,
this is why I wondered if one of the criticism is that they're too open, because there are opportunities to attack them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I mean, what I think is incredible about this Spanish team is you've got a defender like Navas. Now, you know Navas as well as anyone, Pete. If you'd have said 8, 9, 10 years ago, Jesus Navas will be defending the back post better than any English defender does in a high-pressured situation, people would be thinking you've lost the plot. He was a winger who had showed very little, if any, defensive capabilities, and you look how responsible he is as a player now, and the way he's used within that team, obviously with Carvajal suspended. And that, for me, is they do their jobs. Forget the media hype. They do their jobs. The 7 out of 10, every single player on that team does their job in their part of the pitch with a high level of responsibility. And quite aside from the fact they've got brilliance of, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, but Rodri as a player, this is his World Cup, isn't it? It's literally his World Cup to lose, and his World Cup to give up the Ballon d'Or, and his World Cup to, everyone is looking at him, certainly from outside of Spain, and with just incredible admiration for what a player he is and how he makes them tick.
There's very few people that are like an 8 out of 10 every game, aren't they? And he pretty much is. He's obviously hugely influential at City, but you watch Spain and it's the same really for me. He is the oil, isn't he? He's the oil in everything.
Totally. And I mean, with Ruiz, the pair of them, it's a joy to watch.
Yeah, I think one of the things I posted this week that you see a lot of DMs, and there's some great DMs, and the DMs, like Kante that are, really proper, old school tackling sort of DMs. You get registers, the guys that can knock it and play it. Rodri is so good at being the L's. What you don't often see in that position is someone that pops up so many times with the big goal, like big goals. You don't often see that in that position, and that is probably unique to him. I can't think of anyone else.
I can think of a Spanish DM who scored 2 in a quarter-final.
Did he play for Liverpool? No,
he did. Xabi Alonso scored 2 against France in the quarter-final. It came out of nowhere, but he did score 2. But anyway, that's very unusual. talk about every player doing their job. So I want to go back to Morata, because he's getting a lot of credit in, I think, the English media for working hard for the team.
Yeah.
But I think we all are aware, because we've all seen a lot of Morata playing for various clubs. He's an erratic goal threat.
Yeah.
So, but if you look at his actual performances that are doing so much for the team, and that he's doing defending and dropping in, isn't this what Harry Kane's doing?
Well, go on. Would you swap Kane for Morata? I would, in a heartbeat, if I could swap centre forwards. Would you, Tom, swap Kane for Morata?
No, because of the goal threat. Just for the goal threat from Kane, regardless of how we've criticised him for playing deep or disappearing in games, if he's in the right area and we put the right balls in the box for him, you always fancy him to score. And I think that that's part of the reason why Gareth won't take him off early.
Yeah,
because
that is the reason. Yeah.
He knows that there's a goal in him, and it's like Kev's point earlier on about Bellingham potentially coming off. The recency bias is there. They know how good he's been up to now, and they're waiting for it or hoping that it'll click back in. And if it does, then we got the goal in the first game, the overhead kick. I think they're hoping for another one of those moments from him, and if it gets to 75 minutes and they need to change it, then potentially, I mean, it doesn't give him much time to do it, but whether it's Eze or Palmer or Bowen, I mean, he's only used Bowen once, hasn't he, I think, so far. Gordon's not really had a look in. I just think that Kane is the goal threat, that whether it's from the penalty. I know that he doesn't really take the free kicks as much as when he first started at Spurs, but it's always there. There's always that threat.
Your point, though, Kev, is my point again would be with the two of them. If you could swap them, let's say it's Watkins. Let's say he does play Watkins. Watkins' movement not only stretches them, but creates space for everyone else who might score. That's the goal threat for me. Whereas with Harry on, you saw against Denmark, it's bouncing around the box. Or was it Denmark? The first goal in Serbia, bouncing around the box, he sticks it in, but it's not been bouncing around the box a lot.
We saw an example last night of almost a carbon copy of what we talked about the other day, and the example I pointed to when Mainu broke over the halfway line and drove towards their defenders. Yeah. And Harry Kane might as well be the third centre half in a Holland shirt. Seriously, he literally, instead of the other day he was running alongside of him, towing a caravan, this time he was towing a caravan in front of him, zigzagging, not entirely sure which way to go. We couldn't get out of the way. And imagine that. So you're breaking over. Now, what would happen there if Watkins plays? You know exactly what. He'd be making a diagonal run across, just distraction. He probably wouldn't get the ball, but the space he'd create with that movement, and potentially someone being able to cut in across as well. Look, I mean, on the point with Morata, I think for England, neither of those two centre forwards are the right player. And actually, it does beg the question: where are all the good centre forwards in world football right now?
South America.
Yes.
Is the essential answer to that question. But yes, there is a wider issue about what's happening to centre forwards and central strikers in football, and that the shift is to goal scoring wide players. We've seen Watkins operate from the wing and score goals from there at times, although they have now gone, we're playing you through the middle. Rashford, in another era, would probably have just played through the middle. But there could be a potential whole book on that.
You do want to say, look, Erling, you were born in Leeds, lad. Is there not? Can you not just this once? I don't know. It's tragic, really. It's probably.
But can you imagine the criticism he would get? Honestly, because he does get this criticism for Man City. He only touched the ball 5 times.
Yeah.
4 of them put it in the back of the net, but he only touched the ball 5 times.
Yeah. He runs his legs off though most of the time. You know, he does make them runs.
Yeah.
If you play a cam out early and he runs.
Yeah, he does. He does.
He
I mean,
runs.
I think sometimes they're a bit crude. You know,
Yeah.
he doesn't have a great deal of disguise or guile to his game.
No.
But then sometimes you don't need to when you can run the 100 in.
No, it's explosive speed into space.
Or whatever he is.
His movement in the box is slightly more subtle. He does make those double moves when the ball is in the cutback area, but when it's in behind, he just runs. But
I guess. Go on.
What we really talk about with centre forwards now, or central strikers, is they've got to do one of two things. They've either got to run in behind themselves, or drop off and allow the other two players to run in behind.
Get behind, yeah.
And as was mentioned in the previous podcast, if the two players are running in behind, Harry Kane's dropping off is less of a problem. But they've not really done it. It was slightly better last night with runners in behind.
Let's just
only slightly.
Let's just expand. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that. Those two I agree, but there's a third. There's a third, without a doubt. And it's literally the case of opening your body and checking 2 yards to the sides to be able to receive on your back foot rather than on your front foot. And that is an art and a simple technique that Tony, I can guarantee you, will be working with 10, 11, 12-year-old kids on a Tuesday night, chucking down the rain and asking them to receive the ball and where do you want to go with it next as a centre forward. Where's the goal and what are you going to do with it? And I do not see those qualities being valued in the modern game now. It can't be simply because the defensive organisation is better. I think there just is a preference for what you just said. So your point is really valid, Pete, that they drop in and they're kind of false nine, or they drop in and link play or whatever, or they're going behind. And it's too polarised. There's more detail and nuance than that. And I
say those two because I think those are the two that are desired the most.
Yes, sorry. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. But if I'm sat with any team, whatever it is, whether it's an under-9s over here or whether it's literally England on the training ground preparing for Sunday night, I am asking them to do a little bit more, to create a little bit more space, and it doesn't mean running further. It means more intelligent movement, body shape, timing of the pass, communication, all these factors that we talk about with 10, 11, 12-year-olds, but for some reason we don't see it manifest itself at the highest level. And yet, my view is, and I've never played at that level, so I can't tell you whether or not I certainly can't speak from experience, but I would suggest that would and could make a difference.
I think that's, without it turning into a big pile on Harry, that's what's been so disappointing is it's like his ability to hold it up. Just that, innit, is like nil.
It's touches
like the odd free kick, but it's not been good.
I think there's some other little tactical tweaks that we could make that would maybe help him better. I think that both Saka on one side, or as good as he's been, and I thought he was great again last night, and Trippier on the other side, but less so because he hasn't got a left foot. They could look to receive the ball in behind the fullbacks a little bit more instead of always receiving it in front of the fullbacks where they've got to beat a man. I think that might help a little bit. And then the other thing, there was a couple of occasions when it happened last night where the ball's got played forward and set back and you're screaming, third man run. And at one point, Bellingham made a run down the inside left channel when the ball got set back into midfield. And instead of picking him out with a ball over the top, they went out to the right wing. And yet a lot of top coaches are talking, third man, the importance of the third man. And England haven't really done it and not really capitalised on it. And I'm hoping, going back to what P was saying earlier on, with Shaw, they've given him 15 minutes, now they've given him 45 minutes. I hope he starts him in the final. I don't think he will, but I hope he starts him in the final because I do think that he gives us that option to go in behind the fullback. And Saka certainly does. But he's had a lot of success in front of his man, so maybe they won't do it.
So we've reached that part in the podcast where I think we have to ask, do you think we're going to do it, Pete? Do you think we're going to do it?
Who knows? It's a toss of a coin now, isn't it?
Well, let's do it. Do you think we're going to do it? Yes or no? Never mind of it. We'll do the big what's it after. You think we're going to do it? Yes or no? Pete?
No.
Kev?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Yes, 3-1 then. Yeah, I think they're going to do it. I do. I felt it all the way. The only time I didn't think it was against Slovakia.
It's really interesting because if you go back to the last pod, right? And I said all along, I am the one that has, and I defended the way that Southgate has approached this because I do believe that it gives you the best chance. Tournament football, grinding it out and not losing does give you a better chance of being consistent in tournaments. But I'm the one that said no.
I just think we've grown into it. You know, the first 3 games, the group matches, do what you got to do to get through. It was the ugliest 3 matches ever. But I was saying to people when I was in Mallorca the other week and the tournament had first started, look, the French fans, the Dutch fans, like Kev was saying, they probably hate the way that their teams are playing as well. There's not been, apart from the odd game, Germany, Scotland, they've all been pretty close. There's been nobody run away with it. And some of the teams that have had really good performances, one-offs, earlier on in the tournament, aren't in the tournament and didn't get out of the group or didn't get past the first knockout round. Yeah. So, you know, we've grown into it. It's still, you know, there's still things we'd like to see, but if we come out of there after 120 minutes and 10 penalties with a trophy, well, great.
The French fans are hugely unhappy. I mean, they're out now, but they were hugely unhappy with the way that their team was playing. But it is the point that was made previously. How many times have we seen the Dutch and Argentina were probably the best for this in the 90s and 2000s? They come out and they blitz teams in the group stages, and then they go out in the first knockout stage or the quarterfinals. Yeah. Whereas you then get Italy grinding their way through, and suddenly they're in the semi-finals and the finals. And that there is something to be said for playing in that way. You know, you can lose a tournament really early on.
Well, 1986 has to be the one that broke everybody's heart, wasn't it? That was the tournament. That's probably, you know, arguably one of the great Brazil teams got knocked out in the quarters.
Or 82.
What a game against
82, yeah, sorry, not 86.
86 was France, but it was also another.
Yeah, no, 82. Yeah, sorry, 82. Yeah, that's the one that broke all the purist hearts, because it was going to be the best team ever, wasn't it?
I'm too young, really. I mean, I know it was an incredible team, but I mean, the '86 game versus France, for that, you know, I remember Zico, Socrates, Junior, and that to me was a team full of superstars.
Yeah.
Not as good. But on the game on Sunday, I think there's three reasons why I think England have got a good chance of winning. The first is, as Tony said, we're improving game on game. We're not improving a lot, and it wasn't from a very, very high starting point, but we are improving game on game. The second is, I think he'll play pretty much the same team as he normally does, and Trippier up against Lamine Yamal, I think is a good matchup for England. I genuinely think he has a good chance to have his number. And I also think on the other side, I think Walker against Williams, I think Nico Williams is not going to be able to run Walker. And most people 1v1 out in that wide channel against Walker are going to lose. And I think he'll lose as well. So you then got to play through the middle, which is why I'm slightly concerned about Rice on the turnover. But Mainu is providing that great support mechanism to him, and that I think will lock it up. So I'm saying that the wide areas I think will be okay on. And then the third is the way that Spain are playing at the moment. They do rely on that last half an hour of legs because they play high tempo, they play through the pitch, they're constant, they're like literally perpetual motion. They don't have a deep squad, and we've got a deep squad. So those late changes, those late key moments that have been so important so far, I think it plays into England's strength. So better team without a doubt, 11v11 is Spain. But the longer the game goes, the more belief we're going to have.
Yeah, I think what is really interesting, I think these 2 points for me that really gives us hope is that I still think if you sat down with the two squads and picked the team between the two squads, you'd have more English in than Spanish. I do. I think you would. You finish up probably, it might be 6-5, but you'd have more English in than Spanish. And I think our lads walking out on that pitch, there's none of them Spanish players right now that our top players haven't played against and beaten. And that has to give you massive confidence for me. That
I'm going to flag one thing that I think could be a real source of a goal for England. I think in every game I've seen, Unai Simon has given the ball to the opposition in his final third once or twice every game, and he's got away with it so far. I think he's going to give the ball to us at some point in that final third in this final, and that could be where we cash in.
Yeah, I'd even, I've thought about it a lot, since last night. I'd even be tempted it's almost like pushing Bellingham on Rodri. Push him on him. Ask Bellingham to stop that line. Make him. I mean, he might not have the legs for it, but I'd consider that.
Oh, it's like Beckenbauer and Charlton all over again.
Yeah, exactly that. Beckenbauer and Charlton. I'd consider that because it'd be a really good match.
If we could ensure that Foden doesn't end up getting matched up against Rodri, that would be quite nice.
Yeah,
because Rodri knows Foden inside out, and if anyone's going to stop Foden from playing,
well, you see, I still think that with club football, because you do clock it. You do clock when there's two players from your club on opposing sides, and Foden and Ake last night did everything to try not to match up. You just watch it. They didn't want to tackle each other. They really didn't.
Yeah.
And it'd be the same. It'd be the same with Foden and Rodri. It will be. So they need to work that one out. But wouldn't it be wonderful now if we won 3-1 after our vote?
Kobe Mainoo with the last goal.
Yeah. Oh well. You see, what is lovely when having been a City fan, for so long, what I loved about England was that I could cheer for the United players. Rooney was brilliant. Go on, Wayne, lad. Go on. The full 9 yards, and I got a lot of pleasure in that last night. Mainoo was really good last night.
It was amazing, but just imagine what would have happened if Gallagher had played instead of Mainoo.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a criticism of Southgate, because I think perhaps. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find these theories, or I'm finding it easy to see Southgate's way of thinking now. And Gallagher playing with whatever he brought to the team in the early days, and it's quite difficult to find at times. He runs around a lot. Let's put it that way, and that's harsh because he's a better player than that. But he's definitely not the player that Mainoo is, quite clearly. But Mainoo has come and burst onto this and given England impetus, both attacking wise and defensively, because those covering challenges that he's made in both these last two games have been critical. And they could have resulted in goals. And I just think the difference he's made to this England team.
Do you not think now? Do you not think now it's not Gallagher or Mainoo, it's Gallagher or Rice? That's how Gallagher plays, really, isn't it? Mainoo's a lot. No. Mainoo's more of an 8 than a 6.
I see Gallagher as an 8 and a box-to-box player, really.
Yeah. All right.
Just a slightly more combative one. But linked to Mainoo and what's been good, and we again mentioned it previously, when England have done well, I think it's been the dribbling. When England players have dribbled and been brave and driven forward with the ball and taken players on, we've been more successful. The passing, it gives you a foundation to build possession, but really, if the opposition step off, and it's not been all players, but the more offensive-minded players, when they get on the ball and they travel with it, it opens up so much more.
I have to say, I think, those two examples you gave, Kev, earlier of Mainu breaking the lines, dribbling through, having a run, and then, Kane's runs. 2 years' time, 3 years' time, Mainu dips his shoulder and has a shot, doesn't he?
Well,
that's what you'd like to see.
Do that if Kane takes the
Well, a couple of times I was going, go on.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, and there's goals to come from Maino in time. I think Curtis Woodhouse put on Twitter today, and I completely agree. There's a lot more to come from him, which is exciting because how good
it is.
Was it last night's game or the game before where he had that little dribble? He went from the 18-yard line and he just got away from him a little bit, and he took a ride on the centre back's shoulder because he couldn't get at the final ball. I think that's what he's got.
Yeah.
He's prepared to do a little bit of what Grealish used to do, and what Foden sometimes does, and what Gaza used to do, and get in that last 25 yards and go and commit the last defender with a little shimmy in.
Yep.
I agree, but please, if any of you guys have got any influence on what happens to his career in the future, let's not make sure that he becomes someone who has to do every job for this England team. Because the best players do their position and they do it bloody well. And if he's that good at defending, he's that good at attacking, he's that good at running with the ball, he's that good at maybe getting beyond, someone needs to manage him properly and make really good decisions on how he develops as an elite footballer.
I think, fortunately, there actually are enough players of quality to not make it all about one player in this England team. But there does seem to be one player who seems to be wanting to make it all about him, Jude Bellingham, writing the scripts. But I think there are enough players of that level that we don't need to rely on it being just one player dragging you through, not playing as many people have been throwing around the term recently, hero ball. Like Beckham against Greece, for example. That's one that stands out in my mind.
Well, if you just said at this stage in the tournament, first of all, England's still in it, great, everyone's happy. But who are the top performers? Top performers: Mark Gay, John Stones. John Stones was quiet but reliable, dependable, very, very solid again. Top level footballer, been doing that for a long time at the very highest level. You look at Mainu, you look at Foden, you look at, in all fairness, even, although we've criticised him, Kyle Walker, he's done enough to impact the games to show that he's a top level footballer. We're not talking about Bellingham, we're not talking about Rice, we're not talking about Harry Kane. And so when you talk about hero ball, I completely agree. And you know what have we got to come off the bench? We've got a lot. We've got a lot coming off the bench if we need it. Quick
question at the end. Is Lewis Dunk, apart from the goalies, the only one that's not got on the pitch?
Wharton's not played.
Wharton, that's the other one. Yeah, I was trying to think.
I see where you're going with this, because it's very nice to go into a final.
That's the social bit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Getting everyone with a touch of the ball, what it feels like to be out on that pitch, or almost everyone. If that was a plan from the start, and he did it, to be fair, the World Cup, he did it the Euros.
Yeah.
It's part of hhis tournament blueprint that I think Pete Prickett has got inside knowledge of, because he keeps referring to it, and I'm pretty sure he's did more than I have of it.
So finally, guys, because we're on the hour mark, we've gone over the hour mark. Where are you watching it, Pete?
Good question. Probably at home, let's be honest.
Running the throngs?
Without being too insulting to anyone, I can't watch with an audience, with a bunch of people. I just can't. The inane noise often, I can't do it. I'm better off left on my own to watch it.
Do you let the good lady in the room?
She's not interested. She couldn't care less, so it's fine.
Result, yeah. And are you full colours and face paint then, Kev? Wandering around Spain with a big flag?
We'll have a few colours, I think, in the house, and we'll probably have at least one, maybe two Spain shirts. My daughter's got both. She's on a camp at the moment. She packed her England shirt and her Spain shirt, and genuinely, she is torn. She was 4 when we moved out here. So let's see. But no, we're watching Casa Graham with a few people and a couple of beers in my hand. And I get your point there, Pete. I do find it difficult, particularly games that I really, really care about, and I don't think probably in my lifetime I will ever have cared about a game as much as this Sunday. So it's going to be an interesting one.
The more engaged I am, the more it tests my patience. I can remember being at Brentford versus Liverpool, and because that's who I work for Brentford. I was sat at the Brentford game, but there was one of our members of staff sat behind me, and I could hear everything that they were saying, and I'm just sort of shaking my head and watching the game. And eventually I just turned around and said, "Do you actually even watch football?" To which they then said, "No, actually, I don't." I went, "Well, just keep it to yourself then. Just keep it to yourself."
I have to tell you, my youngest boy, who worked at Alicante Airport for 7 years, is seriously thinking of going back for the match.
Really?
All his mates, he's got loads of Spanish mates, but loads of English mates that are still out there, so that'd be fun. Where are you watching it, Tom?
I'll be home, I think. Normally on a Sunday, I have the family around, cook a Sunday dinner for everybody, and they'll disappear about 7 o'clock, and then it'll just be me and Sal. My daughter, she's not interested in football, so she's got a telly in her room. She'll disappear off. But like I say, if she hears me shouting, she'll pop her head in. But I'm a bit like Pete. I get quite frustrated watching football in pubs, particularly if I'm invested in the game, And it does come across as snobbish sometimes when you say, I got chatting to these guys on holiday. Oh yeah, I'm a football coach, and then you kind of have to justify every tut and raised eyebrow. So I'd rather watch it at home.
It's the same at live games. I sit my season ticket, and sometimes it's really difficult. But I have a great quote from my eldest lad who said, so obviously I'm 67, and he said, "We're all thinking of coming to watch it with you, Dad, because it might be the last one that you see."
He doesn't want you getting too excited.
Sorry, oh, cheers. To be fair, I think he meant, the last. It might, England. When will England get to another final? We all hope, the next World Cup, and we're always in finals. But I sort of took his point. You won't want to miss it, really, would you?
So you're watching at home, that note?
Yeah, I think we're all going to.
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments that could have changed football forever. Every football fan has a what-if moment that they know would have brought their team glory if things had turned out differently. Every what-if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate amongst football fans. Buy your copy now, online at Amazon or Waterstones, and let us know what's your favourite what-if moment in football history.